do in Denver, as I'm sure there is in every city. Anything from drag shows to people who cruise around on their bikes and do pub crawls to a great food truck. And so this was really our inspiration for developing our recipe for our programming, because there's something about these elements that people love to do that is attracting the audience to do it.
And we have the privilege and the challenge of having this incredible complex, and as part of our early work really identified the many challenges or the perceived challenges that prevent these people from coming. They are primarily younger audience, but not exclusively, and I think one shift that took place in our work is that we started off talking about young people, and we now talk about adventurous people, which are often young, but not exclusively. So we've got this castle that, you have to get through the parking lot in order to get there. It costs a lot of money to come see our shows. You have to pay to park. You get there and you're asked to turn off your cell phone, and then you're surrounded by your grandparents. And a lot of the people who are going to these events want to have a more social environment, and when you don't feel like your group is there, it can be a barrier. So we were lucky enough to be able to participate in the Innovation Lab for the Performing Arts. How many people know about the Innovation Lab, having participated or applied? It's funded by Doris Duke, created by EMC Arts, which is a firm that specializes in arts innovation. And it's an 8-month process that helps organizations take a new idea, test it out, and implement it in the organization. And so we applied to the Innovation Lab saying, we need to reach these new people who don't come to us. We have an empty space in the Jones Theater, and we want to do something that we can't just have an after party for a main stage show and assume that new people are going to come. We have to do something different and reach them in a new way, and have a space where we can experiment with what works in engaging audiences in new ways. So after that awesome process, which took place in 2010, 2011, we emerged with a plan for moving forward and a recipe for OffCenter. And the main thing we want to share with you today is our recipe and get you thinking about how it can work in our context and how it can work for your organizations. The recipe was inspired by the common threads that we saw in the organization, in the different groups that we studied around town and nationally, and our own interests and desires. Free beer is one of our big takeaways. That's not exactly in the recipe, but anyway, you get the point. So now we'll introduce the recipe.
So the recipe is made up of 5 different ingredients, and when we're thinking of our programming and the shows for the OffCenter season, these are really coming into play. And the first one is immersive, which you all can kind of guess what that is. But we really want to extend this experience, as we're all discussing this weekend, before, during, and after. And we want to really create an atmosphere that enhances the audience's experience. As we were talking about fourth wall earlier today, I believe, or yesterday, we want to encourage the audience to break that fourth wall. And so this is really about an interactive experience as far as immersion.
And one thing that I should note about the recipe, we spent a lot of time wordsmithing because it was important to us that we change the language of talking about the theater that we're making. That's why Emily and I are called curators, because we didn't want to be artistic directors or producing artistic directors or whatever. We wanted to think about doing this in a different way. So with each ingredient, we're going to give you a quick example that will give you a taste of some of the programming that we've done. Our first prototype was, and this was during the Innovation Lab, was the ultimate Wii baseball game. We had a production on our main stage that was all about baseball, and so this was in response to that. We turned the theater into a stadium, and everyone was assigned a team when they came in. We played 9 innings of Wii baseball. People were able to decorate their shirts. We had a jumbotron. We had play-by-play commentators, a mascot. It broke. Well, yeah, the Kiss Cam was very popular. And there were all these different levels of engagement. You could just watch the show/game. You could go bat and pitch. You could get up and dance in the different breakout little mini performances that happened. And what we learned was that people are, when prompted correctly, willing to treat the theater in ways that would appall some of us, but would treat it like a less formal space, which was one of our goals, and that they're willing to participate on these different levels. And we're not going to force anyone to do anything, but having that range of opportunities was really successful.
An example, when they all put on their t-shirts, then you started getting people high-fiving and driving one another, and so it really kind of changed the dynamic. The next ingredient is convergent. Part of having this kind of test lab is that we really want to incorporate a variety of art forms. So we want to think outside of the box of what is just theater, and we want to start incorporating dance, hip-hop artists, graffiti, anything you can think of can be an art form. And within that, we really want to start using that technology in unexpected ways to engage the audience. Because within that experience, technology has a way that is relevant. So not throwing up a technology item just to throw it up, but throwing it up that is actively helping the audience engage with what is happening and helping tell the story.
An example of that is a show we did called Hip Hop Jambalaya, which was a celebration of local hip hop talent. We had a DJ and an MC, a dance crew. We commissioned a graffiti artist to do a bunch of panels through the theater. I learned how to VJ. And we put it all together in this show that was celebrating hip-hop culture and also educating people about the different elements that make it up and where they came from. And this was, all of these artists would never have a place at our castle before OffCenter, and we're really actively trying to find new people and new voices that don't normally have a place at the table and give them a home and find a way to bring them together in interesting ways.
As we're wanting to attract a new audience into the theater that doesn't normally come to the theater, part of that is really reaching out into our community and connecting with our community, which I think we can all agree is kind of a thread throughout this whole weekend. And so being connective is a way we can do that. And we really want to collaborate with our local talent and foster that. And as Charlie said, there are a lot of different art forms that don't have a theater or a home. And so this is a way for them to have an outlet. And we really want to start to build this community around these artists. And we want it to become kind of a cultural and social center. So when we think of OffCenter, we think of your local pub or Cheers. Like you're going there because you enjoy your time there and you enjoy the people who are going there. You're not necessarily going there because it's bingo night or Trivial Pursuit night. You're going because it feels like a home and is a place you want to be.
An example of Connective is one of our more recent shows that was this past November called Drag Machine. That was a drag queen time machine where you traveled with Captain Shirley Delta Blow through the history. And it was really cool. We intentionally cast drag queens with big followings. And one of our keys to success is that we're finding artists that have a built-in audience that will come and they'll share with us. But in this case, the show was great for people who loved drag and who followed drag because it was a drag show kicked up a notch. But there were a lot of our audience that came that was not familiar with the drag world or was not in the LGBT community, and this was a great accessible entry point to that world. And we learned about the history of drag and the gay rights movement all in this fabulous show. So that was a real connective event. So we're going to converge it.
So a lot of large corporations, they put aside lots of money for R&D, which is research and development, and oftentimes in the theater world, we don't necessarily get that luxury. So for us, OffCenter really needed to have an element of inventiveness towards it. It needs to be a test lab so that we can try new things. And part of that branding at OffCenter was really pulling it apart from the main umbrella brand so that there's less pressure and that it is a safe environment, and to fail is not a high risk. It's a very low risk area to try new and different things. And really this test lab is helping us bring in performances and events that expand the definition of theater. I'm pretty sure Drag Queen Time Machine doesn't really fit within what is the normal theater experience.
And I think with that last point, what we're doing is not new to the field necessarily, but it is new to the Denver Center and it is new to Denver in a lot of ways. And so we are sort of pushing the limit and diversifying the ecology of offerings that the Denver Center has. So our example there is a show we did called Square of Ice. We were doing Ring of Fire, the Johnny Cash musical, on our main stage, and we wanted to do the opposite of that. And this was a battle of the bands Johnny Cash style. So we had all these different artists submit their best take on Johnny Cash, and they were competing for $500 in cash. And so in addition to experimenting with the format, it was American Idol style, and we did a lot of voting. We did a live Twitter feed during the show, in between the acts, so there was a constant dialogue going on that's a little bit different than Twitter seats because we were projecting it on and the host was commenting based on what people were commenting. But we also were experimenting with the time. We did it late night and that was not a huge success. We felt that a lot more people would have come if it had started earlier. And we spread it over 2 nights, and in retrospect that was not a great idea because people got tired and we probably could have done it all in one night and it would have been just fine, and maybe we could have done the same program 2 nights and that would have been more successful. So we're always identifying what we're testing in each event and then evaluating that and learning from it and then taking what we learned to scale in the organization.
Now is the final ingredient to the recipe, and that is really, it is what it is. It's really for us, it's the capacity to be spontaneous, to create programming that is relevant now as we live in such a fast-paced world, and news is often on Twitter before it even runs on the air. This gives us an opportunity to be able to adapt to that. And part of this now is that we're centering the work around younger artists. And so the OffCenter gives us an opportunity to provide a platform for someone who maybe is just starting out directing or just starting out doing lighting design or some of those other traditional theater elements. We can help bring them in and start to facilitate and foster that.
And an example of that was a show we did in our first season called the LNJ&J Project. This guy, Lawrence Dye, a sophomore at Northwestern, was a stunt blogger, watched the movie Julie and Julia every day for a year and talked about it. So we decided that we were going to throw a party for him for his final viewing. So we flew to Denver. We created a fan club that met him at the airport. There's a fan club there.
There's a red carpet right there. You can see it.
We got a limo. He did a whole press junket. And then that evening we did a screening of Julie and Julia that was a tribute to his year of blogging with pop-ups every time something he had blogged about happened in the video. We had a drag queen Julia Child. We had a live Twitter conversation going on. The audience got involved. And Amy Adams' mother showed up because she lives in Denver and I heard about it, so that made the whole thing start. Anyway, but that's an example. That show, we decided we were going to do it a while out, but we figured out what it was a week before it happened, and it was very much of that moment. We could never do it again. It was totally bizarre and totally awesome, and that embodies the now.
So OffCenter has been in its first season. We are currently in our second season right now, and that first season really saw some quick successes for us, and one of those being attracting a new audience to the Denver Center. So out of the people who purchased a ticket to OffCenter, 66% of them were new to the DCPA, which is huge for us. In addition to that, we had an average capacity of 81% for the season, which is very high and fantastic for us as well as a new kind of concept. We were able to reach out to different and have partnerships with different organizations within Denver, and that was about 10. But the big thing is we worked with over 160 local artists. And so that was huge for us because we were able to reach out to them and connect and bring their audiences to us.
And looking around, we felt like we really had the right audience. It is the people who are going out and who are at food truck events. But it looks very different from our subscriber base that is normally in our houses. And we did some Facebook comparison between the OffCenter fans and the Denver Center's Facebook fans, which obviously is not scientific. But we learned that our fans are younger, more of them live in Denver, they are more connected, meaning they have, on average, a lot more friends, and they're more engaged. And so we have already built a pretty loyal following that we're continuing to grow. This season.
So what we're going to do now, which is why when some of you first came in you got a number, but we're going to do a little activity. And quickly what we're going to do is we're going to have the opportunity for each of you in your group is going to take one of the ingredients. you're going to have a quick 5-minute session where you come up with ideas centered around a show. The show that we are going to do is what was on the board earlier, which all of you were voting for, and some of you who came in late weren't able to vote, but it's like a choose-your-own seminar today. So the winner is cult following, so that is going to be what we're going to talk about, and Charlie will explain to you what cult following actually is.
So, Cult Following is our monthly improv show. We decided early on that since we weren't able to do a lot of programming, it was important to have something that happened regularly that people would come back for. And it's really designed to create a cult following. In its current format, the tagline is "Theater, it's the new movies." And when people show up, it's like they're coming to the movie theater. So they get 3D glasses with the lenses cut out because theater is in 3D. And there's free popcorn and free beer. There's costumes in the bathrooms, and people dress up and wear the crazy hats that we provide them. So it's a very raucous environment to get started. The idea being that you're going to see a cult movie that's going to be enacted live. It's set we've done it 2 seasons now. Last season was set in a diner, and this season is set in a police station. We have an ensemble of 6 actors, and it's this hybrid form between improv and scripted work. They have an outline that they work from, but they're improvising all of the dialogue. And each month, the audience votes on 5 movie moments that they want to see incorporated into the story. And so before the show starts, we play the movie moments that they've chosen, and then the actors improvise their way through the plot, hitting the movie moments and recreating them, sometimes perfectly, and sometimes doing a totally perverse version of whatever that movie. Our question is, and you're going to each break up into your groups to talk about how cult following can work with these ingredients, but we're now thinking about next season. We've had some great success with this concept. We want to have a monthly show. We like calling it Cult Following. We like the kind of intersection between theater and movies, but we're wide open to how might it morph, and that's where we want to take your collective brain power and also use this as an exercise to get you thinking about how the recipe works in different ways. So, group 1.
Yep, so you're basically, this is row 1, group 2, group 3, 4, you can maybe split up on the second row if you want. Last row is definitely 5, so you guys get to pick 4 or 5.
So we're going to take like 7 minutes for you to talk with your group, brainstorm some ideas, and then we'll check back in and we'll have each group say one of the, 2 or 3 of the best ideas that came to the top around how can this ingredient with this concept for a show, how can we improve upon it, what can we do to make it more immersive, to make it more convergent. This season or next, because we have another show in 2 more weeks. So it's always changing, and we are excited to hear how you interpret this and what it can mean. Is that clear? Yeah. Great, go ahead. We'll come around as well.
I'll rotate around to number 5.
Just happened last night, actually, and 2 people walk through and the actors sort of select the next. With cult following, I think that's a great thing to brainstorm, is like how do we make them make the audience they vote, they choose movie moments, and another question, you guys are connected, right? I think a big connected question is how do you build a cult following that keeps coming back? Because the idea that the regular and it changes every month and you want to come back, but what ideas you have?
Whatever happened, but that ties a little bit like what is currently on the bestseller list. Some mashup.
Keep thinking, that's good. So you guys are convergent. A big question around convergence for local programming is that this hybrid between improv and what does that look like, and what other forms or media can help make that relationship better?
And one of them was
So what about the before and
bus
after?
driver. And they invited a real bus driver from the local transit. And
You got 3 more minutes.
the guy who's a politician who ran a thing called the bus project. They were the guests, and so they used format and they changed it around and they kind of mixed it up. It was kind of the idea of bringing together a combination of artists, improv, but also bringing in local, whether it's political, social work, or just transportation kind of stuff.
So you guys can start identifying some of the ones that have risen to the top that you want to share.
But
You can start identifying some of the ideas that have risen to the top. We're moving fast. You guys can start identifying the ideas that are rising to the top. I'll share
So we said,
Alright, let's wrap it up as quickly as we can. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Organizer. You can do something. You can get more. So you get more.
Okay, let's get back and hear back from the different groups. We will start with IMMERSIVE here.
okay, I guess I'll so
Hold on, I need it. Okay. Ready, set, go.
Okay, so we thought that it'd be fun to do some of the like DVD extras as options, either after the show or like in the show. So like a blooper reel or a commentary track or subtitles, like someone playing along. That sort of goes with Convergent too. Like you got like the actors maybe don't see them, or like the audience is getting something else. You've got another voice in there, or something with different languages, or something with different perspectives, like different angles, or things like that. We also thought it would be cool to do like like when you go to see like sing-along Sound of Music or Rocky Horror, and like you have those parts in the show where you actually like yell things back or do that, and you pick some moments. And you're like, okay, whenever they say the word banana, everyone in the audience has to throw a banana or whatever, yeah. And so they do that, and so but you don't tell the actors, right? And so that all of a sudden like yeah, something like that. We also thought it would be cool to have them ask questions in the show. Like what do you think about this, or cut, or like take it again, like give us a suggestion. We just did that badly, so like, give us a suggestion. We'll go back and redo it or something like that. With direction from the audience. We thought it'd be cool to do some like red carpet interview stuff beforehand. So there's a red carpet and there's photographers, and maybe the audience gets to pretend to be a celebrity or an expert or whatever. But then the pictures that people are taking actually end up on screens as Instagram photos or anything like that. So you've got your celebrity shots that are happening, like who wore it best, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Those are great.
Wow. Great.
Nice work.
We'll send you guys a bill.
Convergent.
Convergent. We had 3 ideas that kind of floated to the top. The first would be to have your audiences do their own, create their own YouTube or iPhone videos about the clips that they were really interested in, and they could submit them. You could do film clips or trailers. At the end of the season, there could even be an awards show. You could make it, that kind of competition. You could probably get, more people as the season went on to contribute. using local musicians and dancers and other visual artists to do some kind of like the like iconic group dances that happen in a lot of like films. Yeah, so like all of a sudden there'd be like a breakout sort of like flash mob and there'd be like a group dance. And then the third one, sort of like in that surprising technology, is using Twitter as like the improv script. So you have the live feed, and you could have people, like tweeting, and the actors would sort of have to just perform the Twitter feed as it like went along, and either parts of it or like verbatim, like that's the conversation.
That's great.
Oh, good idea. All right, group 3 is connective.
So we were talking about how do we create a cult character, because that's what people follow, is the character. And so we were talking a little bit about like how can they follow it even when they're not there? So can we broadcast either the whole thing like a live stream, or are we also talking about editing moments into a video? So if you missed last night's thing, you can watch the blooper reel, or these were the key moments. Especially if you're talking about having the audience on stage, like getting to see themselves reflected back and afterwards, and they can share it on Facebook, and then they're like, oh, I'm a part of this now. And then we were also talking about how, you guys are trying to say that we're the movies. Well, you can also be TV, and what if you turn it into reality television? So, like, is there some way to do competition, or so that people feel like they have a stake in what shows up next time, or even this time? Like, can you live compete? And then also we were talking about, again, having an audience invested in what's going on, connecting to the plot through their own input and plot development. So like, are they tweeting or talking to you guys beforehand about what they want to see, or are they live emailing, tweeting, Facebook, whatever they want to do, and saying what they want to see on stage reflected back?
And also, like, from that, creating like an overarching plot for the season. So it's like if you almost like base it on like a pilot or like a web series arc, that's something that they could broadcast, so you have this connection from week to week to week, and it comes to a culmination that's hopefully a cliffhanger, so they have to come back.
That's all great, and one of the things that's interesting is we call it a movie, but it's really like a sitcom, because the characters evolve over the course. The challenge of the overarching plot is that the movie moments determine the plot each month, so we can't really plan ahead because we have to get the input from the audience to know what's going to happen that month. But those are all great.
That's great. Inventive?
What should we be testing?
He's talking. We were kind of slow to kind of work some of our ideas out.
Okay. Was a little slow on that.
But basically, one of our biggest ideas, I think, was using a painting, a famous painting or mural. And instead of, we were trying to think of what else can you kind of test out versus the movie idea, maybe doing a painting or mural and having people act that out. Having the audience do the improv instead of actual actors. I don't know, we threw that out there. Having people vote on more than just the movie moments, other different things, live graffiti art also, soundtracks, maybe acting that out for the movies. So those were some of our ideas.
Yeah, and I think that the part of cult following that is really beneficial to us as OffCenter being a test kitchen is that we do it every month, so we can always try things over, change up how we build the outline, change up how we market it, change up the audience experience. And so it's a quick feedback loop to always be testing out little things mostly that we're curious about experimenting with. Now
we talked a lot about guest artists and using them in a cameo type of way, and there were a couple different ideas about how to do that. Selecting maybe someone who is not a celebrity of any kind, like a local concessions worker from a movie place or things like that, and kind of integrating them. Also using audience members in cameos. And we also talked about being able to pull topics from very recent things, like looking at what the most popular rentals were for the last week, and then using those movies as your basis, and doing headline work and stuff like that. Anything else that people are?
Great.
Great job.
Yeah.
And on that note, could you also include, like, if you're doing the most popular movies, can you also do, I know this is kind of tacky, but the most popular tabloid of the week?
Yes.
As long as it's within our ingredients.
So we need to wrap up,
There
and we can do some Q&A and stick around if you have questions. This recipe works for us. It is great for us. It was most helpful to help us focus what we wanted to do, but also leave us open to all sorts of different types of programming. But it's centered around these ingredients. And I think the biggest epiphany after we created the recipe was that this doesn't just dictate what's on our stages or what our programming is. It should dictate how we make it, and everything both on stage and off can be filtered through the recipe and can be inspired by the recipe. So it's not just it is our mission in everything that we do, and I think that's really important to us, and hopefully a takeaway for you guys.
Yeah, Charlie really just wrapped that up. This is really, it works for us, and so we encourage everyone to kind of figure out, investigate what your recipe could be that you can use as you're going forth every day in your programming and your marketing and how you're approaching that. Because a lot of even the marketing stuff I've been able to use on a larger platform because I was able to test it at a smaller level. And so this is, this works for us, but we encourage all of you to kind of take this and then develop your own.
We're supposed to end like now,
We're
but
done.
we can do some questions. So if you want to leave, you won't offend us, but if you have some questions, we can answer them publicly or privately. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about, a lot of the breakout sessions today have been things that I go, if I went home and took this back to leadership, they are going to say, no flipping way. Like time, resource. So how did you find company buy-in? Do you start at the top? Do you just have to have a great plan going in? Like, can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you?
Sure. We had these ideas from an early stage, and the artistic director had these ideas as well. It was like, oh, we have this space, we should do something with it. Oh, we need to reach younger audiences. And we were lucky enough to get the Innovation Lab, which allowed us to, A, the rest of the organization to take these ideas seriously, and B, forced us the time and space to go away and figure it out, and gave us some money to test it out. So to be totally honest, without that, I don't know where we would be, because it provided us a structure and it provided us some money to get it off the ground. I think the EMC Arts, which does the Innovation Lab, has a blog called Arts Forward that's all about innovation in the arts. And even if you can't get a grant, you can carve out the space and you can follow their process. And I'm a true believer in that process because it yielded this for us. And the idea of doing research and development, questioning your assumptions, creating a cross-departmental team that works on this, and that's the foundation for the institutional buy-in. Then having a time where you go away from your day jobs to think about it, that ideally is facilitated by an outsider, but wouldn't have to be. And then testing things out at a small scale, so you can have incremental little successes that you can build on and learn from and have quick feedback loops. That is a process that you don't need money for. You need leadership to buy into it, and you need to set aside the time and some resources to make it happen, but it's definitely doable without a grant.
But I think you also answered your own question a little bit, is that like any new idea or something you want to present, doing your research and having a plan and showing how it's worked for other theaters and presenting that in a way that is kind of like they couldn't say no, I think that's the first step. I think oftentimes we come up with ideas and we're like, we should do this, but depending on who your leadership is, depends on how they receive it, and oftentimes you're dealing with a board or a leadership that's used to doing things a certain way, and so you have to present how it would work for your organization and how it will benefit your organization.
And we were lucky to have leadership that got that from the very beginning. So, yeah.
Just a question, did you find any crossover from your younger audience into your more traditional stage? Is that a goal of that too, to bring the people in and then eventually get them going both ways?
I'd say initially it's not a goal. We just want to get them to the center. We have a really great young professionals group that's 21 to 39 that is growing, and they are doing the traditional theater experience. Eventually that would be nice if they crossed over, but I think for us it's really attracting people who don't go to theater and giving them that kind of fun experience where it's interactive. So for us, there wasn't a goal on the outset.
And we've been very upfront with the leadership about that. That like we're not building an audience that's going to come to cult following and then we're going to say, oh, come see Romeo and Juliet. It's not going to work that way. However, the things that we learn about the audience experience in OffCenter can definitely be applied to a main stage show. And maybe once we have this audience that's hungry for newer and less traditional work, as our new play program develops stuff that our traditional theater goers may not be as excited about, we've got this big group of people who's interested that we can directly market to. Yeah.
What kind of tactics did you use to promote this? I'm just noticing this, which is
yes, and we've got.
mail. Yeah.
That's not direct mail. We just
pass the flyer. So how did you get the word out about this program?
Very organically. Charlie can talk a lot about that because he's so embedded in it, but a lot of it, we actually did not use any, the most traditional form is the brochure, and then we did some pretty risque posters for a drag machine.
It was a drag queen's body, and they were posted around town with pipes coming out of the crotch area.
Yeah, it was
so those were
pretty progressive.
But we have a very small marketing budget. We like to talk about it as manufacturing word of mouth. So it's really just energizing networks close to the project. Getting, part of our marketing is our casting, like I mentioned, and then giving them the tools to promote it. We have an advisory group that we call Team Off that's part street team, part ushers, part focus group, and they get their friends to come. We do a lot of social media. It's nothing revolutionary. It is very cheap, and it involves human resources, and it involves building relationships and having a personal face on it. We have not yet scaled it. Our theater is 205 seats, and we sold out Drag Machine and had to extend it, which was exciting. But right now it's very small and the stakes are low, and so we have to figure that out. And yeah.
Yeah, we're done.
We're
so
done.
You guys can go. Don't feel like you're just
And you can come and ask us more questions if you need them.
Thank you.